Welcome! In this video we're going to be taking a quick look at Haemosu, a epic grade debuffer class Elune. Looking at her base stats as 6 star, her stats are decent with a 27k HP, 4.5k attack, and 2.8k PDEF and MDEF. Her speed at 109 does put her at about the higher side of the mid-range, but still not too fast, but not too slow either. The speed will help her later on is because she is a stripper, so she can strip debuffs, or buffs, sorry, she can strip buffs off the enemy, so if the enemy moves first, then having her on that higher speed can allow her to strip. When she's maxed out at +5 on Transcendence, her HP goes up to a pretty decent 40.6k, with her attack at 6.8k and her PDEF and MDEF still at 4.3, 4.2k, which isn't too bad for an epic Elune. Moving in and looking at her skills, her first skill is a front line only attacking skill that does physical damage. As the skill is leveled up to the max, the damage does go up to a decent amount, but with her a little bit lower than average base attack, her damage still isn't too bad with this skill because of the multipliers. Her special skill is a 4-soul skill. This one can attack any single enemy. This attack again does physical damage, and at base it strips one random buff. So if they have more than one buff, it will only strip one. When the skill is maxed out at 6, it will strip 2 buffs. So if someone has both of Weiwei's buffs, this skill will strip both of the buffs off of it. If not, if they only have one of them, then you can still strip one and still do damage to them while stripping the buff, and the skill does do a decent amount of damage. The ultimate skill, Heavenly Rotation, this is an AoE skill that attacks all enemies. If the enemy is channeling, then this will disrupt the channeling. If you do disrupt the channeling, if you do succeed in doing that, then the damage that you do increases by 25% and the cooldown for the ultimate skill is reset, meaning you can use it again. This skill does have some uses in PvP and PvE. The damage is not too bad when maxed out, and the damage increase goes up to 50% when it is max leveled at 6. The uses for this skill in PvE are mainly going to be in the pirates. Whenever you're fighting the pirate, the big pirate that always does his channeling before dropping his bomb or doing his hard hit, you can use her to interrupt the channeling of it, which means it will not be doing that large hit. So if you're unable to kill all of the frontline just trash mobs before you get to the big boss in the back, then you can use this skill to stop it from channeling, which means it won't be able to nuke you. A PvP aspect where this skill can be useful is against certain things that channel. One of the more common ones that you're going to see in PvP on defense that channel is Rachel. Rachel does do a channeling skill, and when she's doing the channeling skill, then she just basically reduces the damage that everybody else takes. So removing her out of that channeling effect can make it easier for you to do damage to the rest of her team without the damage being split. So using this skill on her will disrupt her channeling and not allow it to go on to cooldown, meaning that if she goes into channeling again, because it is her special skill and she can spam it, then you can just use this skill again and interrupt the channeling repeatedly every time she uses it. This will keep her out of channeling and is a way to keep that channeling away so she can't protect the other allies on her line, which is the main use for Rachel on defense anyway. Looking in at her passive skill, the first passive increases her accuracy by 20% if she's attacking an enemy in channeling or if they have a buff. This makes it a little bit easier to land those interrupts for the channeling interrupt, or to land the strip with her special skill to remove a buff from the enemy target. Her second passive, this one, if a attack lands as a crit, then it reduces the amount of soul consumed by 50% for the next skill that uses soul. So not the skill that was used to land as a crit, but the next time that you use a soul skill, like your special or ultimate one, then you use only 50% of the soul required, which means the special skill will only take 2 or the ultimate skill will only take 3, but you'll need to land as a crit, so you do need decent crit rate on her, or attacking something that's paralyzed so that she has increased crit. Her third passive, the third passive is she has a 50% chance to gain a soul whenever she's using a skill that costs a soul. This means that your team has a 50-50 chance of at least getting 1 soul back every time she uses a special or ultimate skill, reducing the cost by 50% chance to 3 souls for the special and 5 for the ultimate. As this isn't, a guaranteed type of event, then it still is there, but it still can happen and sometimes can allow you to use something else for your next move where you might not have been had you not gained that extra soul back. Looking at the skill gems for her, her first skill, the normal attack skill, is a red, orange, as this is a physical attack skill and it doesn't do anything else. The skill gem effect is a 5% chance to stun for 1 turn. Since this skill is pretty much useless otherwise and just is a frontline only attack, giving it the skill gems required, the red, and orange, does increase the damage that it does, adds some to the crit rate, and also gives it a 5% chance to be useful. Looking at her special skill, the red-orange violent gem set gives a 5% chance of increasing the damage the target receives by 10% for 2 turns. This is a debuff that is put on the target with only a 5% chance. As this is a pretty low chance, there could be some other options for this. You can either go with more of the red for the physical damage or orange for the crit rate to try to land those crits so that you have her passives that can be triggered by that instead. The ultimate skill, red, orange, is physical and 2 crits. This gives a 10% chance of reducing the amount of healing the target receives by 50% for 2 turns. While the reduction in healing by 50% is a really nice debuff to put on something, it is only activated with a 10% chance. But since this is an AoE attack, you do have a fairly decent chance of it landing it at least on 1 target. Now with this skill also, it's red, orange, which means with the extra orange in there, instead of being red, orange, for the skill gems you do have a little bit higher crit if you do go with the recommended here, allowing this skill to have a better chance to crit, triggering her passive, and also you have the better chance of the skill with this recommended of at least maybe, reducing the healing they receive by 50% for 2 turns. So it is not a bad option to go with that, whereas the other option might be full orange, so you can trigger that passive for the crit. As far as gear goes on her, you can use various sets for her. You can go with a damage build or you can go with a more support build. She's classified as a debuffer, but her debuffs are really lacking. Her main things that she does is she has a 2 buff strip, one's maxed on her special skill, and she has an interrupt channeling that has an AoE, which in PvP there aren't many things that do channeling, so there isn't too much you have to worry about. Your main channeling things that you'd have in PvP that you might face are going to be a Nasser, which is a tank, an epic tank, a Caroline, which is a legendary DPS, or the Rachel, which is again a legendary tank. Those are the main Elunes that you're going to be fighting that do channeling, and in those cases she is a decent pick against those, as she can interrupt their channeling, as when they're channeling it usually means something is going to happen. Either with the tanks they reduce the damage or protect the team, or in the case of the Caroline it's going to allow the Caroline to do a really big attack on her next turn after she channels. With this being able to interrupt with her, then you can stop that big damage and essentially just waste the souls of that Elune that they use to start the channeling. Going with a gear set such as the full moon set would allow her to have a better chance of landing those strips and landing the resets as it does affect it, but also anything with accuracy is going to be good. So if you're doing Dimension Slate on her, accuracy is always going to be good on her. Her damage is decent as her multipliers are pretty good, so going with an attack build on her for the offhand and primary weapon slots isn't too bad of an idea, as her damage can be pretty good. However, if you're fighting a lot of tanky legendary Elunes or people with very good, well-built Elunes, then her damage isn't going to be that high, and you might want to focus more on survivability, so you might want to go with HP in the offhand and just look for a lot of PDEF and MDEF wherever you can get it to try to survive the attacks. Mostly for her, her usefulness is very limited and she's very niche in her usage. In PvE, she can be an okay farmer, but not too useful, as most of her attacks are single target with only one AoE, and most of the times in PvE, the AoE attack isn't going to be that useful, except for maybe in pirates. Other than that, for PvP, her uses are very limited and you'd have to be very careful using her, and in some cases using something else instead of her might be a better option. But if you don't have other options and you need something to interrupt channeling or to stop a channeling, or you need something to strip a debuff to help you take down a target faster, then she is an option to have, as she does do a single target strip to any enemy Elune and not just front line, and she also has the ability to interrupt channeling while doing a little bit of damage at the same time. That's going to be it for this one. If you have any other questions or comments, please leave them below and I'll answer them as soon as I can. Thank you.